I'm still chasing down my preferred British bitter recipe, so I'm going to go a touch stronger this time and try out the strong bitter style, and that all starts now. Welcome to Big Monster Brewing, the Anvil Foundry edition. I am Matt, and in this episode, I'm going to make a strong bitter on the Anvil Foundry. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, like, share, everything that comes with the entire YouTube process. And of course, comment or question or anything you have to say, please leave those below as well. So the British strong bitter or English strong bitter, whichever way you want to say it, the BJCP category 11C. It's one that I kind of have all of a sudden history with. Weird way to use the word history, but kind of true. I've been pursuing dialing a best bitter recipe. I've kind of had a strong bitter on the back burner, and I've liked the style. I like the entire style of category 11, everything in that. And once I had the idea that I maybe should start looking at strong bitters for kind of my go-to bitter recipe, all of a sudden it starts showing up in places. There's local breweries that start all of a sudden brewing strong bitters or extra special bitters. There's more on the shelves than just the usual, Fuller's that is almost present at every bottle shop. And then to top it all off, I sat for my BJCP tasting exam this past September 2020. And if you're not experienced with that, you get 6 beers that you have to judge, and you're told what the style is. It may not be the style. That's another story, maybe in another video, but you are told how to judge it. And one of the 6 beers out of all the 99 styles in the guidelines was a strong bitter. I'm not going to say I took all this as a sign, but it's just kind of funny. I think it's one of those things where all this was probably there before, but until I put the idea in my head to make a strong bitter, it just started showing up everywhere. It's like when you buy a certain model of car you haven't seen much on the road, then all of a sudden you pass 100 of them on the way home from the dealer. But anyway, to the beer. Of course, we can't do anything without a recipe, so the recipe for this starts with the grist. And in that grist, we start off with a very big base of Maris Otter at 90%. And then we're going to put a little sweetness and color into this beer with a touch of 15L crystal malt at 4%. Then my favorite British crystal malt for all my British beers, Crystal 7080L at 4%. And then I'm taking a little bit of a chance and putting in just a touch of a stronger caramel malt, and that is 2% of 120L caramel malt. I'm making a 2.5 gallon batch on the 6.5 gallon Anvil Foundry. I'm going to start by mashing in at 152 degrees with this one. And once that water reaches 152, I mash in. So this mash starts off a little thicker than I expected. So I give it a good stir, but I'm a little concerned about a stuck mash at this point. But I go ahead and set up the entire recirculation system, start recirculating, and during that entire 60-minute mash, I never did have any problems. I really want this entire single infusion mash to hold at 152 degrees, or at least as close as possible the entire time. So I reduce the power on the heating element to 80%, so that when it cycles on and off, it doesn't go too far past 152 once it reaches that temperature mark. As usual, while I await the conversion, I get my boil additions ready. For this beer, I'm using a single hop twice, and it is the quintessential British hop, East Kent Golding. I have a fresh 2-ounce pack of hops that I'm going to split between the 2 additions, starting with a really big charge of 1.45 ounces at 60 minutes, and the rest of that package of hops, which is 0.55 ounces, at flame out. I also add my usual boil additions of yeast nutrients at 10 minutes and Whirlfloc at 2 minutes. At the end of that 60-minute mash rest, I do raise the temperature to 168 degrees and do a 10-minute mash out. Once that's done, I lift the basket out of the foundry and I sparge with a gallon of 170-degree water. Then I set the foundry into boil mode for the next step of the brew. While I wait for the boil, I do take a sample to get a pre-boil gravity reading. My target was 1.050. This measures out at 1.052, so I'm just a touch high at this point. I chill the wort down below 90 degrees and then transfer it to a 3-gallon carboy. I cover the carboy and set the fermentation temperature to 64 degrees. Then I get a starting gravity reading from the wort left in the boil kettle. My target was 1.059, but I come in again a little high, and it's almost in between 1.061 and 1.062. So I mark it down as 1.062 to measure the final ABV in the end once it's done fermenting. When the wort reaches that 64-degree pitching temperature, I pitch a starter of yeast 1098 British Ale that I made a couple of nights ago, and within 24 hours, we have got quite a bit of activity. After 12 days, I raise the temperature 3 degrees to do a little bit of cleanup for any kind of off flavors that might be in there. Then I cold crash the beer, keg it, carb it with the Blickman Quick Carb. I put the keg on tap, but I will probably bottle a few of these for competition to get some, again, educated, experienced feedback to see where I am at this whole pursuit of my British beers, particularly the bitter style. But until that happens, we're going to find out right now where I think I am with the tasting. We're at tasting time for the strong bitter. Here's the beer I just poured. Head fell a little bit while setting up the camera, but I'm actually quite pleased that there is still a head in that weight. The color is, I just absolutely love this. And I think the footage I took of pouring this is going to show that better. So I think you've already seen the color at its best. So I really am happy with the color. You get ready to see how I am on everything else. So let's start with aroma. So right away, I am getting a little bit of that sweet caramel. Not super cloyingly sweet. I think it's the 7080 and the 15L coming out. I don't think the 120 is overpowering it yet. We'll see how it comes. I think if it is going to, it's going to be in the taste. I get some very, very floral aromas, a little bit of fruity esters. And the more I'm trying to pick out the hop character, I'm actually finding more of the yeast esters. So I'm not quite getting the hop aroma that I was hoping for, but it's still, I can distinguish it, I can find it. I kind of want a little more, but let's get to tasting. That's kind of where my goal really lies on how does this taste. So it's more malt forward than I would like in a strong bitter, but not bad. Let me try. Oh, got a really, really nice aftertaste on the finish. Let me see if I can get that again. So there is an underlying bitterness. The hop bitterness is there. And that's the thing. It's not a specific hop character that's standing out. It's like that baseline bitterness, which is good. I mean, I certainly want the hop bitterness to come out the way it should. I think a lot of the flavors I'm getting are from the malts more than the hops. I'm getting some nice, and when I say sweet, this is super subtle sweet. I've done other beers where I've bordered on cloyingly sweet, sugary sweet, caramel. I've used all those descriptors. The only descriptor I can use, and it's awful as a as a judge to use this, is sweet, because it's not a specific sweetness and it's not a sugary sweet. It is a distinct malt sweetness, and when you really taste and sit and try beers, I think you probably know what I mean if you've done that or read about it, because there's a distinct sweetness that comes with malt that's beyond sugar, caramel, and all those other things. It's there. What I'm positively loving about this beer is the finish. It is just this nice, subtle yet smooth, not dry biscuit flavor that I wish was actually more coming out on my palate and my tongue. That aftertaste is absolutely fantastic. Or I guess the finish, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to try it again to see if I can hopefully possibly pull some more in over my palate when I taste it. I do get a little more now that I'm trying it. I will say, this is way too cold for this style. I don't know what the temperature is, but even just feeling it in my hands and feeling it in my tongue, this should be a little warmer. It should not be room temperature, but I think it should be at least 5 degrees warmer than this is. But I didn't want to let this sit around and kind of the CO2 escape and flatten out. I wanted to get a true taste of it, although maybe I'm not by warming it up. But I think if I let this sit, I might get some more strong flavors. So I think I'm going to do something I've never done on this show before. I'm going to set this down for 5 minutes, or at least, well, I'm not going to set it down. I'm going to put it in my hands for 5 minutes. I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to come back and see if the tastes are coming out at a more appropriate temperature. Okay. So it's not 5 minutes. I've been doing this for about 2.5 minutes, because you don't realize how slow time goes when you do this until you do it. But I will say I was tasting along the way to see what the temperature was like. And in my last taste, it's almost a different beer. It's really amazing how temperature affects this. Let me taste it again so I can get a kind of a fresh idea of what I'm going to what I'm finding here. So almost the entire sweetness I described on the outset, on the beginning of this, is gone. It tastes like a beer. There's the elements of a beer. Can be an ale, I should say, better said. There is always a sweetness with ale, malt sweetness. So there is that as a base, but it's not the primary flavor. The bitter is coming out far more at this temperature, which I'm going to guess is maybe 5 to 8 degrees higher. Far more at this temperature, the bitterness is coming out. And now I'm getting a lot more hop, things I can distinguish as hop flavors. They're still in the floral range. A little bit of sweet. It's almost like a berry flavor, somewhere between a cross between a strawberry, a raspberry, and a blackberry. So it's like it's just squeezing a little bit of each one of those in there, and that might be a combination of the hops and the esters together. But the overwhelming fruitiness of the esters from the aroma, which I didn't really check. Okay, the aroma's still there. But what I was picking up in the aromas, and I would think would be in the taste, is kind of now playing better with the hops at this temperature. Very interesting what a different beer this is. And I don't know why this is. And it may be just because the cold might be some kind of numbing thing. I don't know the physical effects of temperature when it comes to that on the human body. It's finishing noticeably drier on the aftertaste. There's still that underlying, or that still finish of that biscuity taste, which I love. I wish would come out more on the palate, but it's not quite there. But it is noticeably drier at this temperature. I'm going to taste it one more time to see if there's anything else I'm missing. This is more what I expected from this beer. I still don't know if it's what I want. And now it's like one of those situations where I'm kind of getting in my own head, where I've concentrated so much on bitters. I've done a ton of bitters that I've not filmed that I've never been happy with. So now I think I'm just going to step aside, bottle some of these, let some judges at a local competition here give me some ideas of what is working and not working, and stop overthinking it and go on to some other styles. But as a beer to drink, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. I could drink this a lot. So I better bottle enough for a competition or two first before I start hitting that tap, because it's way too easy to pour your own beer when you have your own taps like that. So I think that's what I'm going to do next after I'm done putting this video together. But for this beer, it's a success as a beer to drink and to share. I am still trying to dial in a style. I don't know if I've done that yet. We're going to get some other opinions and find out. But I'm not unhappy with this recipe, and I'm not unhappy with drinking this beer. So that's always a good thing. And when it comes to a hobby like this, like home brewing, that's ultimately really, that's what it's about. So that is it for this beer. That was probably far longer of a tasting than we've ever done before, but I really wanted to find out what would change. So thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video very soon. In fact, I'm going to be doing one of my 1 gallon style study test in the next video, and that is going to be just behind this on the posting. So again, of course, let me say thank you for your time and thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.